Hey, what up YouTube, and welcome back to a new video with Rams fan YT. In today's video, I will be going over my predictions for this upcoming week of football, from Premier League down to some of the FA Cup third qualifying round games that we've got. Got some EFL trophies, some Champions League, Conference League, the National League, Europa League, to the Championship, all sorts, right? So we've got a lot to do. Let's get straight into them with West Bromwich Albion versus Leicester City. West Brom started the season incredibly well, didn't they? They were one of the better teams, although in the last couple of games, they've sort of slipped up a bit, and it's a difficult game for them on the Friday night tonight against Leicester City, who I think a lot of people will expect them to be well in a title race throughout the duration of most of this campaign. And for that reason, I'm going to back Leicester to win this one. 2-1 to the Foxes. Brentford versus Manchester United. Manchester United are an absolute joke at the moment, in all honesty. They are, you can't really know where to place them, really, and have really become a bit of a mid-table team of late. They're up against the Brentford side, which, okay, they've lost a lot of good players. They've lost their manager. So it's going to take a bit of time for them to get their feet back under the table, so to speak. But I think they will win in this one because, you know, it's Man United. So 4-3 to Brentford in a really chaotic game, but the Bees take all 3 points. Chelsea versus Brighton and Hove Albion. You have Brighton, who've had a bit of a mixed start to the season, versus Chelsea, who, let's face it, are a team that have done a cracking job at the moment. They've been in fire in front of goal. Defensively, not so much, but, you know, early days still. And I think you've got to say with Chelsea, they'd be good money to be maybe in a title challenge. Maybe not this season, but a couple of seasons' time. They're certainly building a squad towards it. 4-2 to Chelsea here at Stamford Bridge. Pretty routine win for the Blues. Crystal Palace versus Liverpool. These two teams played each other in the FA Community Shield, and it was a penalty shootout win for Palace in that regard. Liverpool currently are completely faultless. They have won all 5 of their games. However, I think Crystal Palace, we can't criticise them too much. They are the other side, which is unbeaten in the league. So these are the 2 unbeaten sides in the Premier League at the moment in the opening 5 games. It's going to be difficult. It's going to be an exciting game, I think, this one. And I'm going to go with a 2-2 draw. Leeds United versus Bournemouth. You've got Leeds, who are a bit mid-table, a bit topsy-turvy, up against Bournemouth, who have been very solid in the opening few games that we have seen. However, I am going to back Leeds in a chaotic way to win this one 4-3. A second 4-3, you know. Some exciting games I'm predicting this weekend, clearly. Manchester City versus Burnley. Man City, a couple of poor performances, let's be brutally honest in here. But they're up against the Burnley side, who it is going to be a struggle for them. And everyone expected so, but it is going to be a struggle for them to stay in the league. As a result, 3-1 to Manchester City. Nottingham Forest versus Sunderland. We hate Forest, we do on this channel. And as a result, I'm going to be backing the Mackhams to take a win on this one. They've done really well at the start of this season as well. They've made a stupid appointment, Forest, and they're going to rue that day. 1-0 to Sunderland. Tottenham Hotspur versus Wolverhampton Wanderers. Tottenham have done a very savvy thing, getting rid of Ange and bringing in a very good steady hand of Thomas Frank. They're up against Wolverhampton Wanderers, who currently not won a game. I have no idea why they gave a contract to Pereira. It's a bit odd, but I think there will be a point in this one for Wolves to get 2-2 draw at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. Coventry City versus Birmingham City. Another week we're talking about Coventry and another potential local derby in this one. There is a bit of beef between Coventry and Birmingham. Coventry, one of 2 teams unbeaten in the Championship at present. They are doing really well this season. A bit too many draws, maybe you could say. And that is why Birmingham, who have been good in a fair few of their games this season already, are roughly, well, they're on the same points and they're roughly the same quality. The issue that Birmingham have is they're not very good at scoring, and it's the defence which is keeping them in the competition at the moment. That is not the case with Coventry, who are the highest scorers of the division, and as a result, Coventry will run out as 2-0 winners here. Swansea City versus Millwall. Both these teams have been a bit mid-table at present. I think that's fair to say. Both probably have half an eye on a playoff finish. It's obviously too early to draw any conclusions from the small sample size that we've had already. I think I'm going to go 1-0 Millwall. I think they're slightly better, but they're both hard to place your finger on, and it could really go either way. Wrexham versus Derby County. Ironically, our best performances have actually come away from home at the moment, which is always not a great sign. Wrexham have been a bit mid-table at present. They've scored a fair few, but conceded a fair few. Derby's problems, I think, have spending too much time kicking around in our own half and not progressing the ball forward. I'm hoping that Travis changes that and we have a reaction from that disappointing defeat against Preston North End. I don't think we'll win, but I think we will get something. I'm going to go with a 1-1 draw. Hopefully we beat them Hollywood people, but I'm not holding out confidence at present. I still trust Eustace completely, but I just think there's lessons to be learned from that previous performance against Preston North End. Charlton Athletic versus Blackburn Rovers. Blackburn Rovers have played one less full game than the others because their game was called off. Whether that has any bearing on this game whatsoever, I cannot tell you. However, they are up against a Charlton side who, again, another team, one of them teams which are a bit mid-table at the present. They're a bit uncertain about which team you're going to get coming out that week. And it's a bit the same with Blackburn, to be honest. You're not entirely sure. They're a bit hit and miss as well. So we're going to go with a 2-0 win for Blackburn here. I can't reason it. It could go either way as well. Ipswich Town versus Portsmouth. I think Ipswich Town are really underperforming their underlying metrics, actually. I think they should, realistically, based on that squad and some of the performance they've had, be in the top 6 at present. They've just not managed to consistently perform at level. They've only had one win this season, and they've just thrown away needless points in their opening games. And I think it's going to be the same here. And they're up against Portsmouth, a difficult team to play, because they always are seen as punching a bit above their weight at this level at the moment. So yeah, 2-0 to Pompey, we'll go with. Ipswich's disappointing start to continue. Oxford United versus Sheffield United. Wilder is back, no surprise. They're up against Rowett's Oxford United. And I actually think the poor start for Sheffield United has become a bit endemic, a bit rooted in at present. They've lost all 6 of their opening games. They've only scored once. It's not going to be easily fixed overnight in any way, shape or form. And I think Oxford United at the Kassam will win this one by 1-0, especially since they picked up their first win in their last game. Their confidence will now have taken a huge boost, which is definitely not what Sheffield United want coming into this game. Preston North End versus Bristol City. Preston have started actually really well, but so have Bristol City. It's hard to really get a reading on how longevity both of these teams will have in the long run. But both of these teams, I cannot fault them for their opening performances in their first 6 games in the league. They certainly seem to know what they're doing. Paul Heckingbottom and Liam Manning's still at Bristol City. He may well not be anymore. Who with Bristol City? It's Gerard Struber, isn't it? Both of them have done a great job. So yeah, I'm going to go Bristol City, who have been the slightly better of the two teams, on a goal difference alone, of course. But I think in terms of quality as well. 3-1 to Bristol City. I just don't see Preston manage to maintain this performance throughout the whole season. And I don't think even the Preston fans would expect that to be the case. Sheffield Wednesday versus Queen's Park Rangers. Sheffield Wednesday won their first game in their last game, and that may prove a bit of a turning point. We always knew it was going to be a difficult season for Sheffield Wednesday, and they're up against a solid QPR's team who have won the last 3. I think it'll be a right scrap at Hillsborough. 1-1 draw in this one. I think it's almost stupid for me to not back QPR in this one, but I just think there's always something, a little something in my head which just says Sheffield Wednesday could do something. Southampton versus Middlesbrough. Southampton have been poor really since their opening day win. They've not had a win since and have looked quite abject, to be honest, not really up for it. They're up against a Middlesbrough team who are the completely opposite story. They've won 5 out of their opening 6 games, haven't lost yet, have looked really energetic. I do think there will be a 1-1 draw, though. I think it's a long way for Middlesbrough to go, and Southampton is a difficult place to go of all places as well. Let's not forget that they were incredibly good that season, like in the Championship in the past, and it would be a right shame if it wasn't to continue, you know. So, yeah. Stoke City versus Norwich City. Norwich, very mid-table at present, you know. Scored 9, conceded 9. Yeah, you know, it's just one of them ones that you can't place your finger on what they're going to do every single week. Stoke, they've had a decent start to the season, but in the last few games, I'm not sure where to place them. They're defensively still quite good. I just think their attacking output is not doing enough for the duration of a whole championship season. I do apologise about the sun, by the way. That is really irritating, but the blind is broken. It's going straight into your eyes, I imagine. So I don't know much what I can do about that. I can try and sit like this and block it with my head. I'm sorry about that, but there's really not much I can do. But yeah, I'm going to go in this one a 1-1 draw, by the way. As I said, I can't place my finger on Norwich, and I think over the course and duration of the season, they may prove to be better than last season. Watford versus Hull. Yeah, let's be real here. Hull are going to be involved in a relegation scrap. Even though they don't currently look at it at present, they will be over the course of the season. Watford have had a really disappointing start to the season. I think maybe we see a proper good kicking on at home at Vicarage Road, at this one. 1-0 to Watford. AFC Wimbledon versus Wycombe Wanderers. Wimbledon doing a decent job. They've won the last couple of games. Have really taken like a duck to water to this league, haven't they? They are a bit hit and miss at times, but you expect that from a team coming up from a league below. And up against a Wycombe team, which have been struggling to stay in games defensively from that viewpoint. I think we're going to see, but they've played a lot more games in the League One. They played 9 games. So I think this is probably going to be my last video where I'm saying that the table isn't really going to be a guiding principle, because you do say the 10-game rule, don't you? And I think once the 10-game rule has, in a sense, passed, we can really start looking at the table and thinking, you know what, this looks like maybe they could be in that area for the long run. But yes, 1-0 to Wimbledon in this one. They've started quite well. Leyton Orient versus Stevenage. Stevenage are a team which started really, really well. However, it is from a defensive standpoint of which they stand. They do not have a very good attack. Well, they've got a decent attack, but it's not their strongest position. Their attack at the moment would be a bit 50-50, bit mid-table. Their defense is the best in the league. So for that reason, I do just see Leyton Orient just edging them out in this one at home. It's at Brisbane Road as well. I'm going 1-0 to Leyton Orient, even though they have one of the worst defences in the league. I can just see Leyton Orient maybe finishing a bit more mid-table this season. I don't realistically see Stevenage at the top end of the table for the whole season. Barnsley versus Port Vale. Port Vale have won the last couple, but Barnsley have been just a different animal since Conor Hourihane's taken over. They've been consistently quite good. I know they've lost a couple, but by and large, they've been decent. And I'm going to go 7-0 to Barnsley. Huge result for the South Yorkshire-based side and huge boost to their goal difference, especially at this early stage. A 7-goal difference swing in their favour would carry them so much momentum. Bradford City versus Blackpool, another team that is at the top of the league, but I don't think will be there. I think they'll be up there, but I don't necessarily know if they're going to win the league. Is Bradford. They did get promoted last season, and clearly they've adjusted quite well. I think Blackpool, they won their last game, and that could be a bit of a turning point. I don't think they're going to be in relegation zone all season. 4-1 to Blackpool. A bit of a shock one, maybe. But if I said that at the beginning of the season, you probably wouldn't have said it would have been that much of a shock. So in that regard, yeah, it's not too surprising. Burton Albion versus Plymouth Argyle. We've got a couple of games that Burton need to play. And if they win both of them, which is I am going to say it's quite likely because I think one of them is against Cardiff. But even getting one win of them will push them out relegation zone. So they're, in a sense, a bit of a false position at present. But they have been poor as well. Mainly from a lack of goals. I'm going to put it that way. Scoring 5 goals is just not enough to stay in this. Obviously, it's only 7 games, but against Plymouth, they've got a leaky defence. I think that's one thing going towards Burton at this one. They've conceded most out of goals in the League One, by the way, Plymouth at 18. I think we're going to see, and they've not started consistently great or consistently bad. They've just been a bit average. I'm going to 2-2 draw in this one, which would be the first draw that Plymouth have, but I can see it coming up against a team like Burton. Exeter City versus Huddersfield Town. Huddersfield were decent at the start, and the last few games have looked a bit more worn and ragged, maybe is a bit fair assessment. It's a difficult place to go, St James's Park in Exeter. Even though they have lost the last 3, I think they'll be geared up and ready to go for this game. We're going to go 3-1 to Exeter City. A bit of a surprise, maybe. I think they're playing Huddersfield at the right time because I think there will become a point in time when it'll be quite difficult for them to get anything from it. Luton Town versus Doncaster Rovers. Doncaster, what start? 7th place. Did have lost last couple, but so have Luton. It's going to be an interesting one. But I think Luton's longevity may outpace Doncaster's potentially. I do think Luton could win the league, maybe. 4-0 to Luton. We're going to go at Kenilworth Road. We're going a bit mad predictions today, haven't we? We've had a lot of 4-goal thrillers. So, yeah. I mean, it's why you tune in, isn't it? You don't come here to see a 1-0. Okay, saying that, I have predicted the next game to win 1-0, by the way. Mansfield Town versus Rotherham United. Rotherham have really looked a lot lost since Paul Warner's left them. Generally, no one is coming in and providing the same magic wand that he had with that club. And they are currently sitting in relegation zone. And I think Nigel plus Mansfield Town get all 3 points here by 1-0. Northampton Town versus Bolton Wanderers. Northampton really struggled to score. They've only scored 5 goals. They're defensively one of the best teams in the league. Only 8 goals conceded. But my days up, there's an issue in terms of lack of goal scoring. I do think we're going to see an exciting game here. Bolton have been one of the best teams of late in the division. 4-2 to Bolton Wanderers. Peterborough United versus Lincoln City. A little bit of rivalry in this one, a little bit needle. Lincoln have been incredible in the last few games, hence why they're in third. I think they're normally my people I say is a dark horse every single season and do quite well a lot of the time. They're up against Peterborough, who, if I swap places and said that Lincoln were in relegation zone and Peterborough United were in the top 3, a couple of seasons ago, you probably wouldn't have been too surprised. Now, Peterborough have won the last couple, but they have been poor this season so far. And I'm going to have to say it's going to be a 1-1 draw in this one. If you're a Peterborough fan, would you take a 1-1 draw against Lincoln at this point in the season? Stockport County versus Reading. Yeah, it's an interesting one, Stockport, because they finished in the playoffs last season against all odds, really. Not been as exhilarating as of yet. They've still been decent and gathering together points. Maybe because they're not the unexpected new kid on the block that nobody really knows what to do with. But they are up against a Reading who have been poor for various parts of the season. And defensively, Reading do struggle. They have maybe turned a corner that last win. I don't think so, though. I'm going to 4-1 Stockport County. They're at home. I just don't see Stockport losing this one. Wigan Athletic versus Cardiff City. Cardiff have been nothing short but incredible so far. Only lost the last game in the league, but the rest of them were all either a win or draw. I've had a great EFL Cup run. I think they've been really exciting to watch. And they're up against a Wigan side that we've grown accustomed a bit recently to them being a bit inconsistent, haven't we? Not the traditional Wigan sides of old, of course. But we are going to go with a 3-1 Cardiff City win here. We can almost ignore already my prediction for Cardiff because clearly the players at this club are well up for it. Crewe Alexandra versus Notts County. It's a fascinating one in terms of how Crewe started incredibly, and already 9 games in, they've dropped from being top end, top quality, looking top 3, to now being in mid-table. 5 games was all it took for them to absolutely look like they're falling apart. And it's an interesting one in terms of will they come back? They're up against the Notts County team, which is very strong. You know, they know how to score goals. Defensively, I do have some question marks over whether that defense could long term be good enough. But in terms of attacking output, they're there. They're sort of their performances all round are looking like a side who will finish in the playoffs. I'm just going to say home advantage, Crewe to win, 2-0. Oldham Athletic versus Barnet. Both of these teams are roughly the same at the moment. They're on the same amount of points. Barnet have scored more, but conceded more. Oldham have actually got one of the best defense, or have the best defense in the league, which is quite a surprising statistic, but they're right down there in terms of goals scored at the moment. We're going to go with a 3-0 win for Barnet purely because of that goal scored thing. Nothing against the defense, but I just don't feel Oldham. I'm just not feeling Oldham in this one. Accrington Stanley versus Walsall. Walsall having that amazing start all over again, so to speak, one would say. They've been incredible in the last 5 games, haven't they? Up against an Accrington side, which have won the last couple, so have seemed to have turned a new leaf. We'll go with a 0-0 draw. Why not? Accrington Stanley can't score. That is their issue at the moment. They are the second worst scorers in the league, having only scored 6. Their defense, though, is decent in terms of only conceding 8. So I think they'll shit out 0-0 in this one. Going to be brutally honest. Both have got really good defense, not as good attack. Bristol Rovers versus Salford City. Now, yes, Salford have been great at the start of this season. They've been free-flowing, attacking football, really nice to watch at times. Have won the last 3. I think like Bristol Rovers, a difficult team. They have been unbeaten for as many games as I can stamp back my memory, you know. And I think they're really a really solid team to watch as well. I think this could be... The thing is, it's got one of them ones which should be exciting, but isn't. So we're going to go 1-0 to Bristol Rovers, and continuing their unbeaten run. It will change a lot of the top end of the table, actually, in terms of that performance, because, again, it's still early days. Chesterfield versus Newport County. Chesterfield have looked a bit stuck in the last few games, but this provides a good opportunity against a Newport side which have been dreadful at the start of the season. They deserve to be where they are at the moment. They are sort of that 21st, 22nd, they're currently deserved. There are a couple of worse teams than them in the league, but they've not been great at all. And for that reason, Chesterfield to win this one by 2-1. Crawley Town versus Barrow. Crawley have another of them teams which have been quite poor, but so have Barrow. I mean, Barrow at least managed to stay in games a bit more, but they've just not managed to win any of the games that they've held on for a longer period of time for. And Crawley's recent thing says it's slightly better. 1-1 draw. I don't think either of these teams are good enough at present. And it'll be a long old struggle for them. Fleetwood Town versus Colchester United. Colchester have only won once so far, but have actually a lot of draws in there, actually. 5 draws, more than anyone else in the division. So I will not be surprised if they get a draw in this one. Of a 0-0 draw, we'll go with the draw specialists to continue. Gillingham versus Harrogate Town. I think we're going to see a bit of a shock. Gillingham are currently unbeaten. Harrogate have only won once in the last 5, and the other of them games have all been losses. So I'm going to go a nutty prediction, almost in a sense, 2-1 to Harrogate Town. I have no reason to put that prediction forward at all. Sometimes you have to make a prediction with no basis, don't you? Grimsby Town versus Cheltenham Town. Cheltenham, let's talk about the managerial casualty that has happened at Cheltenham, shall we? I don't think anyone is particularly surprised when I am saying that Cheltenham have sacked Michael Flynn. I'm just going to have a quick look. You know, he lost his opening 5 games of his season. My baseline for him to be sacked, and I said as much. He then managed to get a point and win, but now has gone back to a pretty dire performance. One of the ones he lost was 5-0 against MK Dons, which have actually not been that good at the start of this season. They're not as if any of them get... Some of them games are difficult, but some of them, you know, I'm looking at them and thinking against a Crawley, could have potentially won. Against an Oldham, could have potentially won. Against Barnet. They came from a league, like last season. Not last season, it was the season before, wasn't it? Last season, they were in mid-table. And the season before that, they were in League One. So they really shouldn't be struggling, as they are. They have yet to replace the new manager. Whether they get any sense of bounce with Michael Flynn going, I do not know. But it is a very difficult game altogether up against a Grimsby Town side who is great at present. You know, they're in the playoff zone at the moment. A bit end-to-end, a bit erratic, and that's probably why I don't think at the moment they will, from the sample size we're seeing, being able to maintain this playoff charge. But I think they will win in this one. 3-2 to Grimsby Town at Blundell Park. I cannot for the life of me see anything coming Cheltenham's way at present. They are horrendous. That's fair enough to say. They've only scored 7 goals. Sorry, only scored 3 goals rather. Lost 7 games and have conceded 17. It is dreadful. If you're a Cheltenham fan, I do truly feel sorry for you. Shrewsbury Town versus MK Dons. Shrewsbury, a bit of a similar story in a lot of senses. In terms of defensive-wise, conceded 18, only scored 6 goals. Have they sacked their manager yet? They haven't. Michael Appleton is still in charge. I think that is a fair decision because Michael Appleton has only been at the club since the start of the season, and a lot of the problems that he has had were inherited problems, in a sense, a disinterested owner. And I don't think it's necessarily his fault why they've started so poorly. So I think that is a fair thing. And I do think they will maybe manage to win against the MK Dons side, who at present have been poor under Paul Ward. They were poor last season, so it's not all entirely his fault. But in these last 4 games, he does have to take responsibility for losing 3 and drawing once. And I think Shrewsbury do win this one. I think actually both of these teams are potentially going to be relegated this season. But 2-1 to Shrewsbury Town. Currently, my predictions of the bottom 2 are looking very much likely, which I don't think many people would have necessarily said when I made it. Swindon Town versus Bromley. Bromley really good, as are Swindon. These are 2 particularly surprising forms. Not so much Bromley. I wasn't that shocked that Bromley would be in that sort of 8th place they're currently in. I thought they looked good last season. I think Swindon, for me, absolute huge turnaround from their previous few months' performances. I think we go with a 1-0 win to Bromley, though. It's going to be a close game. It's a relatively even game. And I wouldn't be surprised if it went the other way either. Tranmere Rovers versus Cambridge United. Cambridge have been slightly improving. I think another pretty abject performance possibly on the cards, not just in this game but over the season. Tranmere is an odd team. You can never quite place their finger on where they're going to be at the moment. They seem to be perpetually in that mid-table position. I'm going to go with a 1-1 draw in Wirral. On to the National League, we've got Boreham Wood versus Woking. Boreham Wood have had a really good start to the season. They've only lost once. They've scored 20, conceded 12 in their opening 10 games. I think at the moment they're looking like a playoff side. They've got all that energy which looks that new promoted team has, that new reinvigoration and zeal, which I think was needed. And they're up against a Woking side, which is a very opposite end of the story, isn't it? I don't think, if you look at Woking, I think maybe them being in relegation zone is a bit unfair at present. They haven't been truly dreadful. They only conceded 16. It's for scoring with 12, which is the issue. They can't score themselves out of problems. And as a result, I do think Boreham Wood win this one. 4-2 to Boreham Wood. Braintree Town versus Gateshead. Both of these teams have been as bad as each other at the moment. 26 goals conceded by Gateshead, which is the worst in the league. 19 conceded by Braintree. It has all the writings of a thriller, just purely based on the poor defence. But Gateshead haven't won a game in ages. So we're going to go with a 2-2 draw at Crescent Lane. I just can't pick on either side to win. A bit of a similar story just on the other end of the table in terms of this grass. We've got Carlisle United versus Rochdale. Both have looked incredibly good for long durations of the season thus far and a couple of off-days performances. I think this has got a 3-3 draw written all over it. Carlisle have technically scored one more goal than Rochdale. Doesn't really matter. Rochdale have a better defence. But I think it's going to be an end-to-end, a fascinating game to watch. On to the next one. We got FC Halifax Town versus Aldershot Town. Halifax a bit mid-table. Aldershot, attacking-wise, incredible. They've got the best attacking lineup in the league. They've scored 24 goals already. It's truly baffling. But they've also got one of the worst defences in the league, having conceded 23. It's a fascinating team to watch. I think it's going to actually be quite a tame scoring one all round, to be honest, which is a bit counter. But 1-0 Aldershot we'll go with. Continuing with their interesting form. I wouldn't call it good form. They are currently below Halifax in the table and very much mid-table. It's an odd strategy. Hartlepool versus Tamworth. Again, two sides which are relatively even. I would say Tamworth is just edging it at present in terms of their overall form. Both of these teams are a point off the table. Sorry about that. There was I think there's somebody from maintenance coming to my house. But they're coming back later, I think. I'm mouthing to my housemate to tell him to clear off. So yeah, in terms of Hartlepool versus Tamworth, we're going to go with a 2-2 draw in this one. They're both knocking on the door of the playoffs, both decent, but both have a bit of a poor performance in their locker. Solihull Moors versus Brackley Town. So yeah, I mean, Solihull have been poor, haven't they? But I think they have slightly turned it around since they decided to change their managerial hot seat, getting rid of Matt Taylor. In terms of, they've got James Quinn as the caretaker, and he seems to have been doing an all right job since he's come in as a caretaker. He's not got much experience, so I don't think he should necessarily be made full term. They're up against a Brackley team. Brackley have adjusted quite well to this league. They've really done well in the last few performances. I'm going to edge Solihull in this one. I can't tell you why. I think they've just had a bit of a turnaround of late. 3-0 to Solihull. Southend United versus Scunthorpe United. So Southend are playoff contenders at present, but Scunthorpe haven't lost a game and they're doing really well. It's really hard to say. I'm going to go. I think Scunthorpe's unbeaten run does come to an end here. I think Southend, there's not much difference in terms of same goal difference, same goals for, same goals against. Just Scunthorpe haven't lost, So 3-0 to Southend at Root Hall. Sutton United versus Boston United. The Battle of United's at the bottom end of the table at the moment. Boston have been slightly better during this season, but I think Sutton have been poor, and I don't think either of these teams are going to be much better. I think Boston win this one 3-0. They did win the last game as well. Sutton, this is going to be a long, old drag of a season for. I'm sorry, it just is. Truro City versus Morecambe. Both of these teams are currently struggling as much as each other. Morecambe's maybe a bit more justifiable than Truro. How long does ASCII get given at Truro is a good question. If they lose this one, I would be having serious questions. I know they got promoted last season, but it doesn't look good when you've lost 5 in a row. You've only picked up 4 points from the opening 11 games. It doesn't look good. So we're going to go with a 0-0 draw here because I don't think either of them are particularly good. But yeah, it's not a great one. Wealdstone versus Eastleigh. Eastleigh are so inconsistent. Like, there's no other word for it. They're just inconsistent. Whereas Wealdstone, they're inconsistent as well. They're both sort of mid-table-ish teams at present. So it's really hard to predict where they're going, which way it's going to swing. So I'm going to go with it's going to be an exciting game, a 3-3 draw, but I couldn't really tell you whether it would be which team would be better overall in this one. Yeovil versus Altrincham. Altrincham have lost the last 3. They're really an odd team because they sometimes look like they're a team which can be challenged for the playoffs, but sometimes they look in this 16th abject zone. That's Altrincham. Yeovil win one, they lose one. They're so unpredictable. Well, it's predictable in terms of loss, win, if you want that as a predicting. But yeah, we'll go with a 0-0 draw in this one, ending that weird run that Yeovil have. Which I think would be slightly better for Yeovil if it isn't a loss, but and it ends the losing streak of Altrincham, but both of them are bad. Forest Green Rovers versus York City. Both of these were playoff contenders last season. Forest Green Rovers unbeaten, looking straight for a title clinching result. But York have a couple of games in hand. So I wouldn't rule them out at present because if they win them couple, then they are well up in a title race again. I think with this one, though, at Forest Green Rovers home, 2-0 win. Aston Villa versus Fulham. Aston Villa are a side that is poor performances in the league at present. In the Premier League, they haven't won yet. They've only scored 1 goal, but they're defensively really solid. They've only conceded 5, and so I don't think they'll be relegated, but they need to book their ideas up. In a lot of senses, if they don't want to be involved in this relegation scrap come the end of the season. And I think they can win this one. I don't think it'll be huge. Obviously, Villa are struggling in front of goal at the moment. But against Fulham, I could see Villa win this one 1-0 to Aston Villa, which suddenly has a whole different outlook on their current performances, doesn't it? Newcastle United versus Arsenal. We know Arsenal are doing well, and Newcastle are a bit of a 50-50 edging your bet sort of team at the moment. That's partly because they've only scored 3 goals, but only conceded 3 goals. It's their lack of firepower is really holding them back in a sense. But defensively, they're doing all right and making up for it. We're going to go with a 2-0 win for Newcastle United. They're missing Isak quite badly at the moment. But if they can get the goals spread round, they really shouldn't have held Isak to ransom and then decided to let him go anyway. Should have sold him for marginally less maybe earlier on and then brought in a striker as a replacement, because that was a baffling decision, in all honesty. Everton versus West Ham United. We are doing the FA Cup ones, by the way, at the end. The David Moyes derby. And since Moyes has gone to Everton, they have been doing much better. West Ham have only won once this season and lost all the other games. Graham Potter already seeming a bit under threat of being sacked. And the issue is against an Everton side, Moyes will want to prove something against his old club, which sacked him. So we're going to have a 1-1 draw in this one. I think it will be a incredible game to watch for the neutrals. Tackles flying in. But it's not going to be pretty. Champions League, Bodo Glimt versus Tottenham Hotspur. We'll go Tottenham Hotspur to win this one. We're against some Norwegian fishermen, obviously. So 2-0 to Tottenham Hotspur. Chelsea versus Benfica. It's at Stamford Bridge. I think we go with a 2-1 win for Chelsea in this one. They seem to like a good European run, don't they? Galatasaray versus Liverpool. We'll go with the first shock of the Champions League one because, we love a good shock in this. And so if we're going to do a shock in other competitions, we're going to do it in Champions League. So Galatasaray to win this one by 3-2. The Turkish atmosphere is something else. It's quite visceral. It's quite hard to play against. And we might get a bit of a shock performance. Birmingham City versus Sheffield Wednesday in the Championship on a midweek. I do think Birmingham beat Sheffield Wednesday in this one, in all honesty. 2-1 to the Blues at St Andrews. I can't see Sheffield Wednesday winning this. Blackburn Rovers versus Swansea City. Blackburn to win this one by 1-0. And that would be it's hard to tell. I mean, it could go the other way. It really could, because both of these teams are... I think Swansea will probably challenge for the playoffs and Blackburn will probably be struggling for relegation based on my early season predictions. But sometimes Blackburn... The Championship is such an unpredictable league. Bristol City versus Ipswich Town. Now, Ipswich aren't convincing, but I don't think that means that I'm not going to back them to win this one. I'm going to go with a 1-0 win for the Tractor Boys. Both of them are quite heavy farming areas, aren't they? I can't read, I can't write, but I can ride a tractor. So, both of them are heavily farming communities. But yeah, 1-0 to Ipswich. Hull City versus Preston North End. I think this is where Preston's good run comes to an end, if you excuse the pun. Up against fellow North team, Yorkshire versus Lancashire. 2-1 to Hull City. And their mid-table form continues. Leicester City versus Wrexham. I think this will be a relatively easy win for Leicester. 1-0. I think Wrexham are actually going to struggle more than people think. Middlesbrough versus Stoke at the Riverside Stadium. Both of these teams have done well at the start of this season, but home fortress that Riverside can become. 2-0 to Borough. Sheffield United versus Southampton. We'll call it all on as even in this one. I think Chris Wilder will start to have his effect. Southampton being poor at the start of this season. 2-2 draw. Derby County versus Charlton Athletic. We have been all over the shop of late, and I can't get past this, and I just think Charlton will win. 2-1 to Charlton Athletic. We're making too many silly mistakes at the back. I'm not a huge fan of this Sanderson fella. I know he's improved in the last few games. It's just so dejecting watching the goalkeeper passes to the defenders and the defenders lump it forward. It's not effective and it's not working. It needs to change. Eustace, are you listening? Blackpool versus Luton. Luton win this one 1-0. Simple as. Cardiff beating Burton in this one has got it written all over the shop. And 3-1 to Cardiff it shall be. Aldershot Town versus Braintree Town. I think this could be quite an even game, actually. We're going to go with a 2-2 draw. I think it could be quite an even split. I think hard pressed to decide a winner between these two. Boreham Wood versus Southend United. A bit of a similar situation. I can't really pick a winner. Both of these have been having quite a good start to the season. We're going to go with a 1-1 draw. Morecambe versus Gateshead. We know Gates have been poor in defence. We know they've been really bad of late. And I think travelling to Morecambe, I think Morecambe can get another win here. 2-0 to Morecambe. As long as Morecambe stay up, I think next season could be a really good one. If they don't, it will be another season where maybe they're going to struggle, because then they're going to be seen as the big fish in a small pond, definitely. So sort of on the other foot, in a sense, because for years they'd been the small fish in the big pond. So it will change, and their whole mentality to having to play football will change. So a win here will prevent that from happening. Solihull versus Woking. We know that some of these two are going different directions. Solihull are now on the rise. Woking is struggling. 2-1 to Solihull in this. Sutton United versus Yeovil. I think there'll be no energy in this game at all. 0-0. Truro City versus Eastleigh. I think Truro are doing poorly at the moment, and I'm going to go with Eastleigh to win this one. They're inconsistent, but that doesn't mean that they're bad. 3-1 to Eastleigh. Some EFL trophy games for you. Lincoln City versus Manchester United's under-21s. Under the lights at Sinsel Bank, we'll go with a 3-2 win for Lincoln City. They're doing quite well at the moment, and so they might want to just try and continue that run going in the trophy. Notts County versus Barnsley. Both are doing quite well in their respective divisions. We'll go with a 1-1 draw and Notts County to earn the extra point on the penalty shootout. Harrogate Town versus Huddersfield Town. We'll go with a bit of a surprise for Harrogate to win this one by 1-0, just edging out their Yorkshire rivals, even though they have hardly even played each other. I don't think they've ever had a professional game against each other, to be honest. I think it's only been friendlies. But it'll be interesting. Reading versus West Ham United's under-21s. Reading to win this one. They're going to need to get a win so they can transfer this into the league. So 3-1 to Reading. It's a good opportunity in a sense for the EFL Trophy to get a good momentum starter. Peterborough United versus Aston Villa's under-21s. Same can be said for Peterborough, really. 4-1 to Posh at London Road. Barnet versus Brighton Hove Albion. I don't think Barnet won this one. I don't think they're overly concerned about this competition. 1-0 to Brighton. Union St. versus Newcastle United. I think we'll go with a scrappy 0-0 draw. With Newcastle United's firepower yet again showing lacking at present. Arsenal versus Olympiacos. I don't like the owner of Olympiacos at all. I think he's a rotten cheat. But I do think that Olympiacos will manage to cause an upset against Arsenal here. 1-0 to the Greek side. The teams against the Mediterranean-based sides are clearly not in the favour that I am thinking at the moment. Monaco versus Manchester City. We'll continue the Mediterranean side. I think Monaco could beat Man City here. Man City have not started well. 3-1 to Monaco. How long is Pep given? That is a genuine question. I don't think he should be sacked. But the owners will have to start thinking, how long is he given? Because they are very short-term win mentality. And if they have a second season without trophies, questions will inevitably start being asked. On to some games on Wednesday. We've got Millwall versus Coventry at the Den under the lights. We're going to say Coventry's a meet and run, come to an end against Millwall, 2-1. I think Millwall are a solid side and a bit of a difficult side maybe to beat at home. Norwich City versus West Bromwich Albion. I think West Brom starts sinking a bit at the moment. 1-0 to Norwich. I think they build back stronger. Portsmouth versus Watford. 1-0 to Pompey. We know Fratton Park's a real fortress. We know Watford haven't been great at the moment. Yeah, I could see that happening. QPR versus Oxford United. Another team which isn't great is Oxford. So yeah, QPR to win this one 2-0. Old Furnisham versus Tamworth. A fairly even game maybe in this one. We'll go with a 1-1 draw. I'd like to say that Tamworth would be in the playoffs, but I can't promise you and say anything that will make you think that that'd be the case. But they are good in spells. Forest Green Rovers are travelling to Boston United, and an easy win, I think, here for Forest Green, in all honesty. If they're doing all right against teams like York, they'll do all right against teams like Boston. 4-0 to Forest Green. Brackley Town versus Wealdstone. We'll see a response by Brackley up against Wealdstone. They're going to be mid-table coming into the season, Brackley. Just watch. 1-0 to Brackley Town. Carlisle United versus Hartlepool United. Both of these teams will have aspirations for playoffs, if not higher. I think at Brunton Park, I think that's what it's called, Carlisle Stadium anyway. They're at home. Bit of a game match. I think they'll be eyeing up to win. I think they're going to want to make an instant impact and return. 3-1 to Carlisle United. Rochdale versus Halifax. Just across the Peak District from each other, and I think Rochdale will win this one 2-1. York City versus Scunthorpe. It's hard to say this one, which one, where it's going to go, because both are quite solid teams. 0-0 draw. Feyenoord versus Aston Villa. I think Aston Villa will be using this as an opportunity as almost target practice, because they're clearly needing it. 3-1 to Aston Villa. Nottingham Forest versus SC Midtjylland. We'll go with a Danish side to drag out a 0-0 draw. I just hope that they don't qualify for the next round, Forest, in all honesty. Dynamo Kiev against Crystal Palace. Hard to place which one this one's going to go. 0-0 draw. I don't know which ones. They should be winning this, Palace, but I don't know if they necessarily will. Kiev is a decent side. Rotherham United versus Bradford City in a Yorkshire derby. 1-0 to Bradford, continuing their good run. Simple enough. Right, let's go through a few FA Cup ones. Again, we're not going to do all the qualifying ones because I don't have all day. I've already been whittering on here for almost an hour. So this is yet going to be another one of them videos, which is going to be over an hour. So let's see. Chester versus Curzon Ashton. Draw ball number 1. Chester at the Diva Stadium. They have been a solid team in their previous guys before they got wound up and became Chester City. They're a side which spans the border of England and Wales. I mean, they've not always been the best team in the FA Cup, and I think they do need a good FA Cup run, in a sense, because they've just not really managed to do much at present. So seeing them having a bit of a good run in the FA Cup would be a relief for the Chester fans. They're up against Curzon Ashton, though, in the same league. Often a challenging team as well. Been to the second round of the FA Cup a couple of times. They'll be wanting to return. They're an interesting side because National have certainly been going through the leagues a fair few years ago, and now obviously in the National League North, knocking on that door for the playoffs. They've been in the playoffs a couple of times. Where do they make it onto the next stage? Do let me know. I think in this game we'll see a 1-1 draw and Curzon Ashton to win the replay. AFC Fylde versus Darlington. Fylde was formed as an amalgamation between two teams in like tier 13, right? And they are now in tier 6. They have been fundamentally going up and up and up. They've been in the third round of the FA Cup in 2019-20. They're a side that really they've been in the National League before. They're a side that takes this competition quite seriously because they've actually won the FA Vase before as well. So they've been in the FA Trophy final. Won the FA Trophy. So I think they're the only team. Well, one of the only teams to won both the FA Trophy and the FA Vase. And so why not try and okay, let's allow it tongue in cheek, wouldn't it? To say why not try and win the FA Cup as well. But they can certainly give it a darn good go up against a fairly historic team in Darlington, which did get refounded in 2012. They won the FA Trophy in 2011. They've been in the Football League before. They've actually been in the second division before as well, I think. So like even as high as what the modern day championship is. So they've been in the last 16 before as well. So yeah, 1925-26 was their sort of best performance. They've also reached the quarterfinal of the EFL Cup back in the 1960s. So they've been in all sorts of competitions, successes before. But I think Fylde win this one. 3-2 at their home ground. Runcorn Linnets versus Ashton United. The other Ashton side, I'd love to see this rivalry happening in the FA Cup, rather, wouldn't you? And I mean, the Runcorn-based side, Runcorn Linnets, are based on a much earlier team, which was a very successful team in the early days of the top tier of the National League, or as it was then known, the Alliance Premier League. They're up against an Ashton United side that, interestingly, the former Deputy Prime Minister, Angela Rayner, was the patron of Ashton United. I don't know if she still is. They've been in the National League North for a fair few times as well, been to a second round of the FA Cup when they're known as Hurst. They're a decent side. I think there could be on the cards and a possible upset here, but we're going to go 2-1 to Ashton. We'll talk about an upset, so we're going to go talk about Morpeth versus Southport. Morpeth, a team based in the large town of Morpeth in Northumberland, obviously. I think that's the ceremonial capital of Northumberland. Now they've reached the final of the FA Vase won the FA Vase back in 2015-16. They have been under a huge growth since then, including being now in the Northern Premier League, having gone up the leagues from the Northern League to the Northern League Premier League Division 1 East to now the Northern Premier League Premier Division. So they've been on a growth. Southport have been on the opposite journey. They were in the Football League for a long time, becoming founding members as well of the Third Division North. So they have certainly been all over the place in a sense, and since 2017 have been in the National League North and are looking now more than likely to be in the Northern Premier League for next season, which would be very interesting if they do meet in a league converging in a sense in different directions. I think Morpeth win this one because I think they're currently the better team. 3-0 to Morpeth Town. Good ground facilities, to be fair. I've been to Morpeth before. Shame it's a bit of a trek to get to from the bus station, but so be it. South Shields versus Chorley. Another great ground. I really like South Shields ground, actually. I'm a huge fan of it. And they've got a very complicated history that we don't really have time to go into now. It's an apt time to drink from my South Shields pint glass, isn't it? Because there was an original team called South Shields, which helped founded the Football League. They have now nothing to do with that team, in a sense, because that team moved to Gateshead. And this team was formed to fill that gap. They won the FA Vase back in 2017. They've clearly had a huge rise from the Northern League. They were in the Wearside League in the 1990s, by the way. So they've been since the 1990s going on a real upward trajectory. And the ground has changed as such as well. Their highest attendance was 4,000 in 2023 for a pre-season friendly against South Shields. But they've been in a few good... they have a very decent attendances for non-league. It's one of them ones that I actually think South Shields could have a good FA Cup run in this season. I'd love to see it because I would love to go to like a second round tie at South Shields, up against a team like, I don't know, who's a big team, which is Cardiff. You know, how big would that be? Well, they're off against a Chorley side, which really annoy me how much they milk beating Derby County in the third round to reach the fourth round. It was during COVID. We were playing our under 21s mixed with under 18s because they all had COVID, but we still had to play the game. It was absolutely ridiculous that they even claimed that. But it was their furthest run in the FA Cup when they reached that fourth round. So we suppose we give it to them. They've reached the semi-finals of the FA Trophy back in 1995-96. Regular season playoff pushers in the National League North. We're going with a 3-3 draw, and I think when it's at Victory Park, South Shields win that replay. Marine versus Buxton. I saw Marine in the last round of the FA Cup up against Newcastle Blue Star, hence why I'm going to mention them here. I think Marine are well known for their FA Cup exploits, particularly the time that they played up against Tottenham Hotspur. It was relatively recently, if you remember, back in 2020-21, which is what? It's almost 5 years now since they reached that third round. On that day that they played up against Tottenham Hotspur and lost. Well, we did lose finally against Tottenham Hotspur, but it was such an incredible run, and they actually performed, I thought, quite well for a team I don't think a lot of people had heard of, up against a Buxton side that is being in the third round of the FA Cup as well, albeit a bit further away ago, back in 1951-52. And they did beat a Football League side called Aldershot, where 4-3 in the Silverlands, but did lose to second division Doncaster Rovers in the third round 2-0. It'll be an interesting one, this one. I hope that I'm proven wrong. I hope Buxton win, but I do think Marine are going to win this one by 2-1. Hyde United versus Matlock Town. We've got to back at least one Derbyshire team in the tournament, don't we? And we're going to back Matlock to cause a huge upset. Hyde are a team which regularly seems to be knocking on the door of a return to the Conference North, as they used to be known, because they were in the Conference North for a while. They were even in the Conference Premier at one point. The highest they finished was 18th in the Conference Premier back in 2013. Since then, they've gone down a bit, but they reached the first round of the FA Cup on 4 different occasions, 3 different times being in the FA Trophy semi-finals. But I think Matlock will claim the honours here. The huge Derbyshire team who've been in the third round of the FA Cup back in 76-77. They beat third division champions Mansfield Town 5-2 away from home, making it the first time that they'd ever defeated a Football League opposition. Now, they did lose 5-1 in the third round against Carlisle United, but that was an incredible time. They were in the Anglo-Italian Cup at one point. They're a huge team based in the heart of the Peak District, and we're going to go 4-0 to Matlock. Come on, Derbyshire. And we will do the Derbyshire review probably next week at some point, maybe on the Thursday. We'll have to have a look at the calendar. Leiston versus Banbury United. Both of these teams at the same level at the moment. They're for 2 very interesting ones. I mean, Leiston reached the first round of the FA Cup back in 2008-9. Whether they managed to replicate that, only a couple of games away now, aren't they? And they play at Victory Road. And they're an interesting team. They're based in Suffolk, up against Banbury United, based in Oxfordshire. So it's almost an amazing thing to think about that they are actually in Tier 7 playing in the same league. Banbury have been in the FA Cup first round a lot more times. They've been in it 6 times, most recently in 2021-22. Admittedly, they were in the National League North as well, not that long ago. Did a horrendous job in it, got relegated. I'm going to go 3-0 Leiston. I just think if they manage to get to the first round and equal their record, we'll all be a bit happy, It's always great to see a non-league team beat their previous records, how far they run in the FA Cup. Needham Market versus Witham Town. We're going to go with a cheeky upset in this one, as Needham Market are in Suffolk and they're at home. They got relegated from National League North last season. They've only ever reached the first round of the FA Cup once, and that was in 2022-23. Have been in the semi-finals of the FA Vars and quarterfinals of the FA Trophy before, but they are up against Witham Town. Now, Witham Town are in Tier 8. They have been a team that I don't know a huge amount about, to be honest. They were at one point in the Isthmian Premier. I know that. But other than that, I don't know too much about them. 2-1 to Witham Town. I think we may get some history being emerged at this point. Waltham Abbey versus Malden and Tiptree we'll go with next. Both of these teams in Tier 8, so it will be quite interesting to see if they do progress on. Waltham, to be fair, are knocking on the door to get to the Isthmian League. They were in the playoffs last season. They've reached... This is actually their joint best performance in the FA Cup. So if they progress in this one, this will be their best ever performance in the FA Cup. It's also currently their best season in the FA Trophy. They've been doing incredibly well in the Cups so far. They are up against Malden and Tiptree, who you would expect Waltham Abbey to actually manage to defeat. I remember back in 2019-20, which again doesn't feel that long ago, but they reached the second round of the FA Cup. And I was quite impressed with them that season. They also reached the FA Vase semi-finals before. So they defeated Leyton Orient, by the way, 2-1 in the first round before losing only 1-0 to Newport County. And they did reach the first round again the season after losing 1-0 to Morecambe. So they're a decent team. Both of these teams will be wanting it quite badly. 2-2, Waltham Abbey to win a replay and for this to be their best ever FA Cup performance, which you love to see. You really do love to see it. Royston Town versus Kings Lynn Town. Royston are... they've been in the fourth qualifying round of the FA Cup before in 2019-20. So if they get through this one, they equal their best performance, but they have never got to the first round proper before. So it could be a very interesting one if they do so, but it is a difficult game, even at home, up against the Kings Lynn Town, who are regularly involved in the playoffs, been to the second round of the FA Cup a couple of times already, and will more than likely be wanting another good cup run. I'm going to say 1-0 to Kings Lynn. I think it could be a very even game, and I would be absolutely ecstatic if Royston win this one. Stamford are travelling to Sutton Coldfield Town. Sutton Coldfield Town are a huge geographical area. So this FA Cup revenue may be enough to put... Or a cheeky FA Cup run could actually put them quite firmly on the map. If they, manage to get to the third round and draw over a Birmingham City in it, it suddenly sparks a lot of local interest. If that's at home as well, you can bet that that's being packed out. And a couple of first-round proper appearances they have made in the past did cause quite a lot of a knock-on effect of growth, in a sense. They managed to progress themselves to the Southern League Premier Division because of it at one point. So, it does help these FA Cup runs to these smaller clubs because it brings them attention. And they're in the league below, and in Tier 8 it's highly unlikely that they manage to get that far, but that'd be a huge achievement for the club. Stamford have been in the first round of the FA Cup back in 2016-17. They've been in the playoffs of the Southern League, or challenging for the playoffs rather of the Southern League recently, in the league above. So you'd expect maybe an easy win for Stamford. I'm going with a 1-1 draw and Sutton Coldfield Town to win on a replay. Another upset in terms of that one, but I think it would be huge to see Sutton Coldfield progress round. Even if they manage to get to the first round and draw against a Walsall at home, that could be quite big. Or draw against Solihull Moors in the next game. That would be, if they get past this one, another interesting games. Stamford, it would be interesting to see if they drew against Peterborough Sports, if they both managed to get through, because I think that'd be an interesting one, because I think Stamford could win that one. Or against Boston United, if they get through to the next round, that'd be an interesting one as well. There's a potential for local derbies in this. Horsham versus Folkestone Invicta. Sussex versus Kent. in between these two teams, and Horsham are in the league above, but only due to being promoted last season. They've been in the second round of the FA Cup a couple of times, most recently a couple of seasons ago, back in 2023-24. And they are hosting Folkestone Invicta, hugely historically associated Folkestone in football terms, in regards that it was in the Southern League. They were spent a lot of time in the Southern League and then the Isthmian League, but they also spent time in Conference North and South, I think. No, it wasn't. But they've been to the first round of the FA Cup back in 2005-06. It would be an upset for them to get through this, but I think they will. We're going to go with another upset, and we're going to go with a 1-0 Folkestone Invicta. Salisbury versus Dorking Wanderers. Salisbury are the Phoenix Club of Salisbury City. We can all remember some of the things that happened in Salisbury City, but this is technically already Salisbury's best FA Cup performance, which is a bit embarrassing, but considering we're only 10 years old, we'll let it slide. So if they progress, this could be their best FA Cup run ever, but it's not going to be an easy game up against Dorking Wanderers, who normally do quite well in the same league that they share. No, if they get through Dorking Wanderers, they equal their best performance. But they several years in a row they reached the fourth qualifying round. They've just yet to manage to go one stage further and go into the first round. But I do say that Dorking Wanderers will do this one 2-0. Poole Town versus Weston-super-Mare. Poole in the league below, at home, could maybe be a cheeky upset in this one. Who knows? They've reached the third round of the FA Cup back in 1926. They're one of the better supported teams, I think, in the Southern Premier League. They have a mascot called Dylan the Dolphin, by the way. Big up Dylan. And they play at the Tatnam Ground, which I think is a cool sounding stadium. One coastal town, though, is playing against the others in Weston-super-Mare, who have reached the second round of the FA Cup back in 2003-04. Has spent some time in the Southern League before. They've been in the Conference South quite a bit. Never higher than the Conference South, but they are trying at the moment to push onto this thing. They have actually managed to beat Bristol Rovers in extra time before at their ground. And I thought that was a huge day in the club's history. We're going to go 3-1 to Weston-super-Mare in this one. AFC Toton versus Frome Town. There's a 2-league difference between these two teams. And I think we could see an interesting one. Now, we know that AFC, well, you may not know, but AFC Toton reached the second round of the FA Cup in 2011-12, where FA Vars runners-up in 2006-07. But we know that they got promoted to the National League South last season. But they're up against Frome in the Somerset, who got relegated last season. But this is an interesting one. They reached the first round of the FA Cup back in 1954-55. I'm going to go with a cheeky upset. We're going to have a 1-1 draw, and I can't really tell which way the replay is going to go, but I'm going to back Frome Town to do it. We're going to go with an upset. Why ever not? Another upset potentially will be Flackwell Heath versus Bracknell Town at home in the league below. The team, which is based in a literal village near Wickham, are potentially moments away from equaling their best ever performance in the FA Cup of the fourth qualifying round. Something they haven't done in over 20 years now. And they are taking on Bracknell Town in the league above. It's going to be a difficult one. Let's not kid ourselves. It's a difficult game. And Bracknell have been good in the FA Cup of late. They reached the first round in 2000, 2001, but more recently 2022-23 and 2023-24. But I think we could see a bulldozing by Flackwell Heath. 4-0. Finally, Chatham Town versus Deal Town we'll go with. Chatham founded the Southern League. They were the first team to play up against the likes of West Ham and Portsmouth, and that will be something that they will forever have. They're a hugely historic club. They reached the quarterfinals of the FA Cup back in 1888-89. I doubt they'll be ever beaten. But yeah, they're an interesting one in terms of they're normally in Tier 7 for quite a long time, but they're up against a Deal Town who have been knocking on the doors of playoffs of the Isthmian South East for a while. They won the FA Vars back in 1999-2000, reached the third qualifying round of the FA Cup. This is the 5th time that this is staged, but if they beat Chatham this one, they get and do their best ever. I just think Chatham win this one 7-0. Thank you very much for watching this video. Please do subscribe if you're new around here. Please do let me know any predictions you may have, but I'll see you all in the next one. Goodbye for now.